Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity and Love. Absolutely fabulous guests from all over the world with incredible backgrounds. We've had all walks of life, from Delta Force operator, the youngest ever admitted White House physician, to the president, two different presidents for about 7 years, Rear Admiral retired, healers, doctors, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, New York Times bestsellers. Hopefully some more athletes. Want to bring you some former Olympians soon. But the point of the show is there are no limits in life. Perhaps love's the fabric of the universe. And maybe we're all 5 seconds away from meeting, who knows, Buddha, Einstein, your relative, your passed over pooch. All I can say is I think each moment is the opportunity for a little more love. Who knows? Only you can decide what you can decide, when you can decide it, if you remember to. Now, back to our guest. Coming to us from Oregon is a really distinguished, incredible background guest. It's Dr. Marjorie Woollacott. Now, she's got a huge pedigree. I'll do the best I can to just give a little bit of flavor, and then we're going to get her talking. She's a neuroscientist and author, super acclaimed. Her latest book, I believe, was from 2015. It was Infinite Awareness, won the Nautilus Award and a bunch of other awards. She's a former professor of human physiology and a member of the Institute of Neuroscience at University of Oregon. There, she was chair of the Human Physiology department for 7 years. I'm not kidding. She's held posts in Sweden, France, and elsewhere. If you ask other people out and about in America who are in scientific and other, research circles, she has a tremendous, tremendous reputation. So totally honored to have her here. Marjorie, thank you for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love.
It's wonderful to be here with you. Already very, very interesting to spend time with you. So thank you.
And can you tell, you were just coming from Sedona and you kind of split your time between Sedona and Oregon. Can you tell us just a little bit about the flavor of life for you right now? What are you up to?
Yes, what's beautiful about having retired from the University of Oregon and doing neurologically oriented research on rehabilitation medicine, stroke, and Parkinson's is that I now can expand my research. And so now my research is on consciousness, and it's on really looking at the evidence from the perspective of a neuroscientist on whether consciousness can be fundamental and whether we can actually see it through a lens that helps us understand that, in fact, consciousness is the primary force in the universe. And of course, by consciousness, we mean awareness, love, infinite potential, those sorts of things. That's the ultimate substance of the universe. And from that consciousness, our own material awareness begins to like crystallize out little by little into our thoughts, into form, et cetera, into our lives. And so the research I'm doing now is to really explore that from the perspective of somebody who had a spiritual awakening and somebody who's also a neuroscientist. And so I'm always looking at it from those two lenses. And what that means is that I'm saying, okay, from this third-person objective scientific perspective, what do we know about the brain when we have a mystical experience like a near-death experience? And then I say, and what did the person experience at the same time? And can I put those two things together and understand more about what's really going on in the universe in terms of our true nature as human beings? So my latest research, in fact, I'm just submitting an article right now to the journal Explore on a case study of a woman named Stephanie Arnold, who had a near-death experience during the birth of her second child. And in that experience, in fact, I should say she had cardiac arrest and died for 37 seconds, no heartbeat, no anything. And when she came back from that near death, what we call experience, she had no memory of it. And so she said, but I know something happened and I need to understand what it was. So she went into hypnosis therapy afterwards. And with the hypnosis therapist, every single detail of her dying process and the resuscitation came back to her. And she had recorded the hypnotherapy session so that she has absolute evidence of exactly what went on, what she actually remembered in that hypnotherapy session. And then she validated it with all of the hospital personnel that were in that room with her when this was happening. And so I said, well, I know she's written a book about it for herself, but I want this to be out in a scientific journal where medical doctors and scientists will see it on the PubMed index that our National Institutes of Health has, so that when they look up things like near-death experiences, they will see the evidence that supports the fact that, first of all, we can have these experiences of awareness when our heart has stopped and our brain is flatlined, and that it happens in more than just, say, 10 or 12% of the people. It probably happens in a lot more, but they just don't remember it. So there's my joy right now, is like looking into those areas of consciousness that can't be explained from the neurophysiological perspective, and saying, let's look at the data a little more closely and see whether we can convince some of our materialist colleagues whether they might actually want to be curious about this and perhaps begin to do research themselves.
Oh, I love this. Now, we're going to go in a couple directions. We're going to ask you about that spiritual awakening in just a little bit, and you'll keep us on track here. But let's talk what materialism science is, what post-materialism science is. There's a lot of folks, I think Dr. Evan Alexander refers to materialism and so on. And I know I've had other guests as well with a scientific doctor background do the same. Can you just differentiate those two?
Sure. So materialism is, in fact, the philosophy I had when I was a young neuroscience graduate student and a young professor. And it's the understanding, which is what most scientists in the world today have, that material reality, meaning the atoms, the molecules, et cetera, of our world, are the basis of everything in the world. It's all a material universe. And if there is any consciousness in our brain, it's actually a bottom-up process where our brains actually create this consciousness from the neurons interacting with each other. And what those neurons are perceiving through the five senses is all of the material reality that's out there in the supposed physical universe. And there's nothing more than that. So once you're dead, you're dead. There's no more consciousness. And that's exactly what I thought when I was a young neuroscientist, because that's what we learned in graduate school. But what happened then, of course, is when I had this spiritual awakening, I began to look at the research that is actually out there by some scientists on things like near-death experiences, after-death communication, mystical experiences, psilocybin experiences, for example. And I found out that there is a wealth of research that actually says that, in fact, when our heart is flatlined, our brain is flatlined, we still have awareness in certain conditions. I'm holding up my cat to you right now because she wants to say hello to everybody. So basically, I was enthralled by the research once I opened up the PubMed research index and typed in the word near-death experience and found these papers. And the same thing happened when I typed in, for example, spiritual awakenings and after-death communication. There is an amazing amount of research from credible scientists that is carefully authenticated about the existence of these things. And the problem is that people like me, when I was a young neuroscientist, simply say, I know it can't be true, so I'm not going to look there, because I would know the research couldn't be real. And instead of being curious and saying, let me just look at those papers and see what data they have, we just close the book and we say no. So the post-materialist perspective then is just that opposite perspective, saying, let me look at the research and see if in conditions where there's no EEG, there's no EKG, no heart activity, does the person still have an awareness of what's going on around them? And of course, the answer is yes. During cardiac arrest, this happens. And the other thing that's important is it's not just awareness, like maybe they're hearing something in the resuscitation room, is that they actually can hear things down the hall. Their ability to move their awareness down the hall and hear what the family is saying to the doctor down the hall, or go to their family home and hear what somebody's saying there. Or of course, as you and I were talking about earlier, go to another state of consciousness where they can interact with their grandparents who are on the other side. And the grandparents can say, hey, it's not your time. You have to go back. So those are the sorts of things that I then am studying from this post-materialist perspective. And I want to add one more thing. I don't think this is an either or phenomenon. And I often give the example of these wonderful drawings that have been made, for example, of a vase and faces. And if you look at the foreground of the drawing, you see the outline of a vase in black. But if you look at the background, you see the outline turns into two faces on either side. And what we're trying to say is that just depending on the lens with which you're looking at a figure, you can see one or the other, but they're both there. And I think the materialist view has been very helpful in giving us more pharmaceuticals to help us be healthier in many ways, but it's not the only lens. And we have to consider the other lens. And of course, without the materialist lens, we wouldn't have the technology today we need. But you have to consider that, in fact, there's many, many, many research studies showing that consciousness is fundamental. And when you shift to including that lens in your worldview, you suddenly see the interconnection between you and the rest of the people in the universe, the animals, the plants, the whole planet, the whole universe, and you treat everyone with an increased compassion and love that you don't have when you think we're just little robots running around that came out of material bodies that have no real consciousness. So I think that's the difference. And that's why I and many other researchers that you've interviewed are saying, wake up, world, because we are hurting ourselves and others with this narrow perspective of materialism. And we would actually make the world thrive if we could really embrace the fact that we are all interconnected. We are one part of one whole.
Wonderful. Okay. Is this being unfair? And I'll modify the metaphor in a second, but there's the whole world is flat concept, and then the world is circular, and it's a much bigger Earth. But the world is flat when you're on it and just looking left and right, and you can't blame anybody for coming to that conclusion. And I think if we do it that way, we tamp it down a little. Is that a fair analogy, sort of materialism?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like when you're only looking through the five senses, the world appears in that sense around you to be flat. But when you are have the ability to open up to more than your five senses, to really, again, what I call it as a neuroscientist is turning down my narrative perspective. We call that the default mode or mind wandering network in the brain. When we can turn that part of the brain down that's only interested in my story, me and how I relate to the world, that self-absorbed perspective, then when we quiet that down, we see the world in a three-dimensionality that is so much richer as we see everything else around us and include that in our perspective. And then, of course, feel that compassion for everyone, including ourselves.
Now, we're about to get to your spiritual awakening, but let's just go for the biggest picture of all. How do you define the universe? Could it possibly be love? Is love the fabric of the universe?
I think that, I mean, I use the word consciousness or awareness, but when you talk about the essence of consciousness or awareness, it is love. There is no question. And I want to take it one step back. The word they use in Sanskrit, because I've also studied many Sanskrit texts, is Chit Ananda. And Chit Ananda means consciousness and bliss. And they use the word bliss as another word for love. So in fact, it's this fact that it's a bliss and love all rolled into one that is aware of itself and everything around it. So yes, it's love, bliss, and this awareness of the incredible miracle that we are immersed in.
Brilliant. Okay, what year was it? You got to give us a little bit of a narrative, blow by blow, like you're talking to Hollywood screenwriters trying to get it down in detail. What happened? What was your spiritual awakening?
Yes, so it was 1976 when I was still, in fact, just a new professor at a university in Virginia. And my sister was, in this case, one of those people that decided to explore the spiritual side of the world. And I called her a hippie. My boyfriend at the time called her a bubblehead because he said anybody interested in spirituality can't be a serious scientist or anything. And so nevertheless, she was with an Indian meditation master during the summer in the Catskill Mountains of New York. And she said, your birthday's coming up. It's August the 25th. Come up to the Catskills and spend this weekend taking this meditation intensive workshop. And she said, I haven't seen you in a while. It would be wonderful to see you. So she treated me to this meditation intensive workshop with this Indian meditation master. And I went up there skeptical, but I was skeptical with a little curiosity. And I should mention it was partly because earlier on, about 6 months earlier, I had been, in fact, in Arizona visiting her and my parents for Christmas, and there had been a plane crash right over Southern California where 2 planes crashed and everyone was killed. And I was frightened to death of flying. And when I heard that, I didn't even want to get on the plane to go home back to Oregon. And so my sister said to me, as she was going with me in the airport, at that time you could go up like close to the ramp of the plane together. She said, I have something that can help you. And at that point I was really ready. And she gave me this mantra, this simple mantra, which is Soham, which literally translates into I am that, I am all that is. And I didn't know what it meant, but I was open. And I began repeating it as I went up the ramp and got on the plane. And my usual white knuckle takeoff was gone. And I was feeling total joy and happiness looking out at the clouds around me when we were up in the sky. And so that moment opened me to what, maybe I will take this meditation intensive workshop. It's like that was wonderful. So that's the background. So now I am in the Catskill Mountains, and I am sitting in the meditation intensive workshop, and I'm told that the Swami is going to come around the room and he's going to initiate every individual there in the first meditation. And now, clearly, the scientist in me is skeptical. It's like, initiation, what is that? But so I'm sitting there on the floor, my eyes are closed, and I can hear him coming around the room, and I can hear him getting closer to me. At that moment that he comes in front of me, my eyes are closed, but I feel with absolute clarity his hands like on the bridge of my nose, right between my eyes, touching me. And in that moment, I feel a current of electricity go from his fingers into my being and down into the center of my chest, right to the center of my heart. And I feel this expansion coming out from the center of my heart. And I say, it's at the point of the physical heart, but it's not like any physical heart has ever been. And it radiates out of me, and it feels like pure love, pure nectar flowing through me and beyond. And the words that come to my mind in that moment are, I'm home. I'm home. My heart is my home. I finally found my home in this realm, and it's right in my own heart. And I should say that when I then went home back to my university position the next day, what happened was that I woke up spontaneously at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I got up to meditate because somehow that experience let me know that just beneath the surface of my awareness simmered this quiet ecstasy, and I could tap into it now. I'd found it in my heart, and I've been meditating every day ever since. And that feeling in the heart simply grows and grows little by little as I keep up that process. And also it then moves into the rest of my day. So one reason I am now so happy in my day compared to before that awakening experience is that that is living awareness inside of me of that joy that's just always percolating there.
Oh, okay. Totally wonderful story. Amazing. Talk to us a little bit more about the dynamics of like consciousness, love, the heart, awareness. Awareness is on the horizon for mankind. We're not quite there yet. We're doing a lot of knowing that precludes possibility. And then there's all the stuff that happens from the neck up, which you can't be shocked about. It's like the movie Casablanca. I'm shocked to see there's gambling going on up here. Thinking, fear, stress, worry, rejecting, resisting, reacting. Give us the pep talk on these dynamics.
Yes, I think the key for me as a neuroscientist is that I really wanted to understand what the brain is doing to keep me in my normal awareness in this narrow feeling about reality and myself as being separate from everything else. And why is it that in a spiritual awakening like that, or a near-death experience, or for some people, psilocybin, something like that, something expands outward so that I now feel infinite. I feel connected to the rest of reality. So that's the research I've begun to do in the past, like about 10 years. And what I've discovered is not only through my own research, but that of others, is that what happens when we actually are born into this physical body in this world is that we end up having a number of filters in our brain that are very useful for getting along in a three-dimensional universe so that we aren't hit by a car, we aren't gobbled up by a bear or something like that. But those filters limit our awareness of who we really are. And I'll just name to you a few of them because I think we're probably all sort of aware of them. The first are just our five senses, like every one of the five senses. And we'll just take vision, for example, as the first one. They basically take this amazing electromagnetic spectrum of all this visual information coming in, and they only look at three wavelengths, which are the blue, the yellow, and I think it is the green that we typically see, and everything else is filtered out. That's all that they actually bring in their own canalizing, in a certain sense, of the information, because those are the most important parts of the spectrum for us to live in and survive in this world. Okay, so we've already seen an incredible filtering right there. And then when information goes up from our senses into our brain, there's another reticular activating system that also suppresses all these vibrations even more to only those things that are important for our waking consciousness. And then, to me, the most humorous in some ways network we call the default mode network, because it's our default mode in everyday awareness. It's also called the mind wandering network because it's those thoughts we think all day long about our role in the world, how we relate to other people, the argument we just had with somebody, the goal we have for what's going to happen later in the day. And it is totally me oriented, and it leaves out most everything else that's going on. And this network, I think we're all aware of. And for me, the most telling tale is when I'm out in the woods walking on a beautiful walk, and I haven't seen a thing around me for the last like 30 seconds because I'm involved in the story that I had about something that happened in my life. And literally what that default mode network does is it's a reverberating circuit between your cortex of your memories and your midbrain and back again, with those stories reverberating all day long. And if you don't quiet it down, your senses, even those measly 5 senses we have, get locked out and you really don't see much going on. So, I mean, the beauty is that with meditation, with a near-death experience, what happens is that default mode network is turned way, way down in activity. And suddenly, not only can we see much more through our 5 senses, but we can begin to see beyond our 5 senses. And we can begin to have that awareness through what we call the 6th sense, which is our intuitive sense. And suddenly we can literally hear through our intuition a friend, that's about to call us. And we suddenly get the friend's image in our mind. And then, oh, there's the friend, calling on the phone. So those are the types of things I think that we learn about through our research on meditation. And now there's been so much research, and I'll just name a few names. Judson Brewer, who did a lot of research on meditators at Yale University Medical School, and actually looked at the fact that when he put them in a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, he found that their fMRI in the area of the default mode network turned blue, which means it turned way down in activity compared to how it looks when you're just resting, thinking, when it's bright red.
And I got to meet him in the faculty lounge at Omega when I got to guest there as a speaker two summers ago. So that was kind of fun.
Exactly. So that research. So those are the things that are really inspiring. When we finally go to the research and we look at it, we say, well, how could I have said it didn't exist? Because right there is all of this research from mainstream scientists, Yale University, Harvard University, et cetera, all saying that this is real.
Can you go into just a little bit more about who has been a rallying cry for you? Who has been a shot in the arm of, probably shouldn't say that these days, but who has been an amazing amount, like a jolt of courage, enthusiasm, a refreshing reminder part of humanity is truly curious? It doesn't have to be another researcher like Judson Brewer, but who else is doing it right for staying open out there? Is it Dr. Joe Dispenza? Is it somebody else? Who do you get excited about?
I'm going to actually name the person that I'm just getting to know even better in the last few weeks, and that is Dr. Lisa Miller, who is from Columbia University. And I highly recommend her book called The Awakened Brain, because in fact, she is doing research that's parallel to mine, but she's doing it now looking at the function of spirituality in an individual person in our society. Because, in our secular universities now, in our secular science, people poo-poo spirituality as important in any way for our flourishing as human beings. And she has done research for like the last 20 or more years, in fact, showing that having a spiritual orientation in life, whatever that spiritual orientation is, it doesn't matter, but whatever the spiritual orientation is, it protects you from depression. There you go. That's the one for all of the people. She is unbelievable.
We had her slated as a guest, but she couldn't make it. So it was one of those rare occurrences.
She is very busy. And I know, so I'll just give you a humorous example, which she will laugh at, because I was reading Awakened Brain. I had just picked it up, and it was because I had heard her on another podcast, and I was very astounded at the synchronicities that have happened in her life. And I'm I'm editing a book on synchronicities with a number of well-known scientists that are submitting essays on synchronicity. And I saw her amazing stories on synchronicities in her life. And so I quickly texted her and I said, Lisa, would you be willing to write an essay for our synchronicity volume that's already in production, but I could probably delay it and I could get this essay to it if you could do that relatively quickly. And I'll even write the first draft for you based on your book, and then you can edit it. And I didn't hear back from her for 2 days. And I then just texted her again. I said, okay, Lisa, I realized, like always, you're very, very busy. And I really respect what you're doing, but I understand it's not going to happen. And she calls me on the phone driving someplace with her daughter and says, oh, Marjorie, I really, really want to do it. And if you will write the first draft, I'll go ahead and then edit it and make it my own, and we'll do that. And so I laugh because Lisa is overcommitted all the time. And she is an amazing researcher, and that's why she's overcommitted. So I'm going to say a tiny bit about what she is doing, which I think is fascinating. And that is that she's showing that, for example, this default mode network I just talked about, when somebody has a spiritual orientation, even if they come from a family of grandparents and parents that were severely affected by depression, that spirituality protects them from the risk of depression in their life. And that is so important because, as we know, all of the drugs that our pharmaceutical companies and our doctors prescribe for depression do very, very little for depression. It doesn't really help us. And so she's showing that all we need is to have a spiritual orientation, and that will protect us in ways that the medical profession, with its best intentions, cannot do in the same way. So, so maybe you will get her in the future on your show, but saying that, I highly recommend her book to all of the people that listen. She's wonderful.
Oh, I love it. Okay. I'm going to give a couple quotes. Some of these quotes I've used on prior shows, but it's meant for food for thought for you. I'll give one from Plato, but this is since he passed over. So awareness is empowering. And we can talk about Plato's cave or a jail cell. You're holding onto the bars of the window looking out, but you never look back and see the jail cell doors open. You could have just walked out. Here's a NASA astronaut, Story Musgrave, who really has a brilliant quote. I like it for a bit of motivation here. Getting out of the comfortable path, that's what exploration is all about. And then a definition of compassion from an angel named Mac. Don't call her Mackenzie. Compassion is treating every moment with the awareness of a newborn baby. And finally, I'm randomly picking out of an 18-page sheet here. Wayne Dyer, everything you are against weakens you. Everything you are for empowers you. Can you run with any and all of those quotes, or where did it take you in terms of an emotional response?
Well, first of all, I'll start with your first one, and I'll just paraphrase it. You can repeat it again, but it's the idea that curiosity is so important, getting out of our comfortable past. And I would just say that that was what I was in when I was a young professor. I was in this comfortable past of being told by my professors that the brain creates consciousness and that's the bottom line, and forget anything else. And using that paradigm, I was doing very capable research on actually helping people with stroke recover their stroke function, helping children with cerebral palsy become able to move better. So it was a useful paradigm, but it was a comfortable paradigm, and it wasn't the whole story. And not until I had that curiosity, based on my experience with my sister and then this wonderful meditation awakening, was I able to move out of that comfortable past to actually expand into something that was even more empowering. Not to put down my original research, that was helpful, but this is going even further. And just one little aside about this, I have, since I started doing this research on consciousness, also appreciate people that are looking at astrology, for example, and helping us understand how our own backgrounds align with what's going on in the planets and the stars. And I went to this particular astrologer, and she said to me, Marjorie, in the next few years, you're going to be involved in healing many, many people. And I looked at her and I said, but I'm not a physical therapist, I'm a researcher. And she said, you will be involved in healing many, many people. And what I saw is these various talks and articles I have written have actually affected amazing numbers of people to say that about what I've said and written. So
when you're a healing presence, you're an artist. So I would argue your writing, your research, and just how you carry yourself, your energy is a good impact on everyone and everything around you. So can you take us one more level in terms of spirituality? What do you suspect? What do you suspect is going on? Can't prove anything. It hasn't been in a paper. We're not talking science anymore. You got to get out onto that thin ice, and we may hear cracking sounds. What's your suspicion?
Well, see, it's not even a suspicion. This is a knowing, because there is an inner knowing that happens from the heart. And in fact, I'll take another step back, because a friend of mine just called me the other day and said, Marjorie, if you were to go on a scale of 1 to 10 and ask yourself, do I know what my purpose in life is? What would you say? And I said, an absolute 10. I know my purpose in life. But that's because with that spiritual awakening, my heart opened up. It became my home. I knew at a deep, deep essential level that I was connected to everything in the universe. The heart knew. The mind didn't know. But the mind continually argues with me, here and there about those sorts of things. But the heart knew. So I think what I'm saying is that what I do know absolutely is that I am connected with everything. And I am, again, some people might object to this, but I believe it's absolute truth. I am infinite awareness, and I am part of infinite awareness. I am both and. I am a tiny grain with infinite awareness, and I am the whole thing. And it just depends on my lens, whether I focus on the little or I focus on the expanse, but I am both. And therefore, I am one with everyone around me. And therefore, if I see someone that I think is separate from me, that I begin to judge, I have to remember that we are of the same essence. And once I see that we are the same essence, I can drop my judgment and I can see the heart, the joy, the love that is maybe buried deep inside of them. And it's not on their surface at that moment, but it's there. And then I can actually accept who they are as somebody that is a brother or a sister. And I want to give you one example because there's a wonderful new documentary that just came out. It's not available yet, but it was shown on the Scientific and Medical Network. David Lorimer is the program director that actually had it shown. And it's called, I think, Renaissance. And it is about 3 near-death experiences, and then the scientists that actually have been studying near-death experiences. And one of the near-death experiences had a scene where the woman who was a nurse saw her end-of-life review. And in one point in the end-of-life review, what she saw was this moment where she was at the cash register about to check out. A woman before her didn't quite have enough money for all that she had bought. She was $1 short, and the woman was feeling humiliated as she felt she had to take something back to the shelf. And in that moment, she just pulled $1 out of her wallet, handed it to the woman to pay, and she didn't think anything more about it. But in her near-death review, she was told by this spirit on the other side that had ripple effects that went all around the world, because that woman then changed the way she treated others and is now working in a food pantry helping other people. But now, one of the negative things that happened, she said, because she was a nurse, she interacted with other nurses. And there was one nurse in the hospital that she worked at that never was as kind to patients as she felt she should have been. And she didn't like that nurse because she wasn't empathetic. And she then distanced herself from the nurse and did not give her a lot of friendliness. And she was shown that that nurse had an abused childhood, and she kept that nurse from expanding into a much more broader, nourished personality by actually pushing that nurse away from her. And if she had accepted her as she was and befriended her, that nurse could have grown in so many ways. And that was a real reminder to me that when I judge somebody and push them away from me, I am keeping them from growing, keeping them from having my unconditional love, and accepting that something in their background has made them the way they are, and I can help them through my love, accepting them as they are, move forward. So to me, that's the lesson about we are one, and we need to really acknowledge that at that deep level beyond our judgments. Judgments are okay. We're human. We all have judgments, but can I then look beyond my judgments and say, maybe there's something else going on in that person's life that's making them act that way, and can I then treat them with love?
Truly fantabulous. Now, David Lorimer, I got to plug him because he's an upcoming guest. He's already recorded his show. He's fantastic. He and I talked a bunch of years ago, but we got to reconnect, and he is fun. So hearty endorsement, and people need to check out that episode. Also, we need to have game show bells ringing. So I'm hitting an invisible button, and people can hear that, because you're episode 126 coming up towards 2/3 of the way through 2024. But I've waited 70 episodes to find a person like yourself who's reflecting the following characteristic. And part of the name of the show is it's Angels, Positivity, and Love. I'd like to talk about positivity. Is positivity abundance? In my mind, you've tapped into that vibration of positivity and allowing and just letting love in, or allowing more, or allowing. Can you run with that one more layer for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so first of all, I love the word positivity. I mean, and the reason why is, again, I have a phone call with a friend every morning on Skype where we talk about all these things related to what's going on in our life now, because in the moment, we might not feel positivity. But if we just talk about it together for a little while, we see the positivity that comes out of whatever the situation was that might have made us a little bit sad for the moment. And I'll give you just a few examples. I mean, we talk about the fact that we came into this world for a reason, and it wasn't just for pleasure. We came into this three-dimensional reality to learn to be brighter beings in this world, brighter beings for ourselves and for everybody around us. And the only way you learn is to have lessons that are not purely pleasurable. And so whenever my friend Anne and I are talking about some lesson that wasn't purely pleasurable, we remind ourselves that it's about becoming brighter human beings. And so to me, that's the issue about positivity. I can turn any situation into one that shows me that there's a positive learning in that that will make me a more compassionate, a more loving human being in the long run.
Okay, now I'm going to paraphrase maybe. And this is from a Netflix film that I cannot remember from 4 or 5 years ago. But in the end, love is what shows us life in different colors, or as people say, the contrast. Okay, can you just talk to us about, geographically speaking, around the world, where have you enjoyed traveling? Where, and let's put it out there, if you got unlimited funding, like it's Jurassic Park, but without the dinosaurs, somebody came to you and said, here's $1 billion. You can do 6 different documentaries, maybe do one with I forgot what the neutral group is, but you take meditative groups, they go to, Kilimanjaro, Machu Picchu, India, 20 different places, and you make a fantastic documentary about it. And the poor people get stuck back at Princeton with wires here, and they're the control group. That's what I was trying to say. They don't get to have any travel fun whatsoever. Those are your grad students running that. You're out on the field wearing a cool safari hat, having a good time. Egypt. What would you first describe in the past? What trips have you done that are influential or impact? But where are you dying to go now that you've been let loose? What's ahead if unlimited funding came in and you can write and you are writing your own script? Can you give us the past, kind of the where things are right now and where you'd like to go with it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, the thing that came up brand new in my mind as you said that, so the universe is sort of like sparking something, is that because I have talked to a number of people who are meditators and interested in consciousness being fundamental, talking about their experiences with Aboriginal cultures or native cultures of one continent or another, and talking about what they've learned from the wise people of those cultures, what I might do is to go to a number of those cultures, and if they would accept me as somebody to come in and work with them and talk with them and learn from them, actually then create a documentary. And some of the places I think of is a woman that is a good friend of mine, Grace Moore, spent a lot of time in the center of Australia. And she worked with the Aborigines there. And it was at Uluru, the mountain Uluru and the villages there. And the wisdom elders let her in and they taught her. And she said it was the most amazing experience of being with them and learning from them. And then I'll tell you, then I have another friend from New Zealand, and she's from Maori descent, and her name is Natasha Tassel Matamua at Massey University in New Zealand. And she is trying to combine in her research both the Maori indigenous wisdom and her own understanding of near-death experiences and other experiences of that sort, to put them together. And I would like to learn from her elders and the people that she works with. And of course, the same thing goes for the elders from, for example, some of the native tribes in, for example, Canada, the north of Canada, Alaska, the United States. It's like, I think they have a lot to offer us in terms of expanded awareness. And we need to listen to them more and really listen to their story and what they have to offer.
Oh, incredible. I'm going to read a quick passage from a book that's, if you take this with a grain of salt, written by angels. I just saw balls of light as I typed, but it's also very gentle language. What's Up with Mankind? Why Angels Now? And that was sort of the heading in the beginning of the appendix. And here it is. Awareness for mankind is on the horizon. Call it a spiritual awakening if you wish. It's a chance for all to grow. Mankind is ready for more unconditional love and compassion for all, and more compassion by all for all is needed. Mankind is ready for change from rat race mode. Happiness is obtained in the absence of ego. Ego is afraid to be vulnerable, to let go, and to be in the unknown. Again, there's nothing to lose and nothing to gain. Move past seeing the negative. Compassion can be taught through one's actions. How? Slowing down would do a world of wonder for most people. Doing it consistently is where the problems and opportunities lie. So stay present. Start right now. Letting go means less thinking, Do not get lost in perceived tasks, roles, ego, etc. Being in the moment is to do compassion for all. And I'll leave it at that. What's your reaction again to the concept of we can all be more awareness? We can all just simply be a little bit more during the day.
Exactly. I mean, I think what you're saying is that whole understanding of presence. And just using that word, it's like, I think sometimes we don't understand what it really means, but presence means turning off the default mode, mind wandering network of our narrative, of our stories, and being present to exactly what's happening around us and curious about what's happening around us. Really curious to what's coming in through both the five senses and beyond through the intuition. And as you were talking about, somebody said, one of the things that I learned from my near-death experience is that I want to be in dialogue with that higher power as much as possible during my day. And that's being present. It's like then asking questions of your higher power in any situation. And if higher power is a word some people are allergic to, they can say then my own intuitive awareness. We can use whatever word we want. But it's like that connection. And of course, that's a positive connection. And then you can even ask them, it's like, help me understand why this is happening to me right now so that I can feel positive about this particular situation going on. So I totally agree with that. And I think that's again what Lisa Miller was showing in her own research studies is that the key is that we have to not just it's not that we're dissing the achievement mode, which is what the Western world was doing, but we're saying that's just a part of reality. The other part is this openness and curiousness to what is going on in a much wider sense and being aware of what we can learn through our intuition, through speaking with our higher power, in addition to whatever we feel in the moment might be what we want to achieve. I mean, there's nothing wrong with achievement. I've done it all my life, but having opened up to this broader understanding, I'm much happier. Achievement can be so narrow in its focus. And when you include the rest of the world as part of your interests, everything shifts and you feel the joy in your interconnections and you're learning from everyone and everything around you.
I love it. And while you were saying that, if you managed to grab Lisa, because she is super busy, I was talking to her staff mostly.
Yeah.
You are both welcome to come on. First of all, you're welcome to come back. It'll be March or April of 2025 for folks. But you're welcome to grab her and both come on and talk about your mutual interests. We've reached that point in the show. I'm going to light some sage. If folks have never seen the show before, welcome. But please do hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, do your thing. Even a couple words, just like I love Marjorie. She's wonderful, sparkly. That works great. But give a little extra detail too. Share with something, you know, a reaction you've had to something she's said. I'm going to light a little bit of sage. It doesn't matter where you are, if it's 2030 and you're in Germany, New Zealand, asleep and listening to this somehow. I don't know how that's possible. You can still catch the scent of sage wherever you are. And if you want to go absolutely wild, ask for flowers, ocean smell on top of it. You've just what Marjorie was saying. You got to do it your way. Make the request, ask angels, the universe to get you out of your head into your heart. Your heart is already there. And this is the Zen thing. Seeing without seeing or hearing without hearing. But in this case, schnogging without schnogging, smelling without smelling. Okay, there's a little bit of sage smoke. I suspect Marjorie might already be getting this in Oregon. Are you?
Oh, yes.
I didn't do it. We did it before the show, folks, so we knew it worked. I've only sort of struck out. Lorna Byrne in Ireland was like, Mike, I'm not smelling the sage, and I had a heart attack on air. But she's like, I do smell daisies and roses. Are you getting any flowers? And I felt like I was like, oh, thank God, Lorna. Are you getting any flowers or any Hawaiian smell or anything like that?
Right now, I'm just getting a very sweet smell of sage, almost like incense. I mean, it smells wonderful.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm going to snub it out now. Folks, play it at home or it's on all the other shows and so on. Let's do this. I'm going to just put up a couple photos of angels and you can get a prompt for another topic because, I mean, you're good for 1,000 topics in 100 hours. And unfortunately, we'll probably only go like 15 or so more minutes here. We have gone 3.5 hours in the past. Again, you are welcome to come on anytime. I have an APL Spotlight series where you can take unlimited time, take us in any direction. That'll be up to you and you'll get in touch after the show. But here's the very first angel people meet. She's actually the emotion, joy, high vibe, peppy voice. People can put out their hand, treat her like a fireplace. They can just ask for a flower smell. You have to get out of what you think you know up here and into possibility and ask for whatever you think you can ask for, and then allow and let her deliver it to you. What are you getting, Marjorie, from joy? Are you getting a smell, a vibe? Are you getting a couple words on a topic you could share with us?
Yes, I mean, what came to mind is the whole understanding of joy meter, which means many of us in this world have our joy meter right at the top, like really like bouncing off almost the end. And I think for me, it's looking at myself at any given moment and saying, how can I let that joy meter really express itself in terms of the joy of what's going on? And so I love this whole fact that there's an angel that you are communicating with called Joy, and she helps our joy meter like go right to the top.
And my dog is named after her as well, by the way. That Joy lobbied and was like, "You got to name her Joy," when she was a puppy, and I was like, "Okay." I'll do two more photos. I'll do a Native American chief in a second named Red Shirt, but also an angel named Charlotte. Or actually, here I'll put up two at once. I'll put up Charlotte and an angel named Min, who's a light waves of energy and water. The first one's a teacher. The second one's a soft-spoken professor. People can see the word in there. We had Dr. Karen Wyatt on, who will air the end of the summer of 2024. People should check out her episode. She immediately was like, "That's my guardian angel." And she went into great detail of how she saw that angel standing over her bed as maybe 11, 10-year-old little girl. And that got her on her entire medical career. So I got two angels for you. One's named Min, one's named Charlotte. And what are you getting from Charlotte and Min?
You know, I'm getting that same feeling from Min that I talked to you before about this incredibly sweet, sweet being that is reflective, is compassionate, is really a loving, loving presence. And I love the fact that she's a professor.
Cracked me up. Yeah, she's light waves of energy and water. Last summer, I was in a pool once or twice a day. This summer, I've been a little slack getting in the pool, but I was there just an hour ago. They have me looking at the light waves of energy in the pool. There's zero explanation for this except it's grounding. It gets me out of my head and a lot more. I love water. So, and I'm in the middle of Texas. Let's do one more figure. I need to think who it is for 1 second. I'll give you a choice. Carl Jung, Einstein, which by the way, both of them are sparkly and fun, or a figure from India. You can name your figure, or how about Geronimo? You want older Geronimo?
I want Carl Jung.
Okay, we got Carl Jung coming. He's like, thank you, thank you. Okay, here he is. And I think he's got an insight that resonates with what you're always talking about. And then if you could share and go into it.
Yes.
What'd you get?
Yes, I mean, the reason why I chose that too is because of this volume on synchronicity that we are working on right now. And the fact that before I started working with synchronicities, I'm putting my cat aside here.
I didn't do it.
Before I started working on synchronicities with a group that, in fact, David Lorimer organized, I was the scientist that said, oh, synchronicities are just coincidences. And then as I began to really hear other people talk about their synchronicities and look at my own life, I found example after example in my own life that I had ignored in the past until I really looked with a new lens. And then I began reading Carl Jung's work, and it was like, oh my goodness, his understanding that there is an interconnection in the universe that is underneath the surface, that is always there, helping us in a certain sense to actually receive what our heart really desires by connecting us with other beings in the universe to allow that to happen. I suddenly saw how often that happened in my own life. And so, in fact, our book is called something to do with basically the play of the universe, which is synchronicity. I mean, it's really it's the playful universe. And I think that's what I am learning, is that this is a playful universe. And sometimes there's a trickster in the play. It's not just that it's all pleasure play, but there can be a trickster too. But we can laugh at the play as well as we watch it unfold. And it's that interconnection where we send out a desire, a heartfelt wish, and the universe answers and brings us situations that bring that to fruition in one way or another in our lives.
Are you finding, and you don't have to answer this at all, but if you're at a cocktail party of fellow peers, you've all had a fantastic retreat weekend together, where are you still finding yourself occasionally putting your limits, and you have to remind yourself, Marjorie, let that go, let it fly and stay more open? Where are you finding yourself just being a little human here?
Actually, when you say that, it's a little bit the other way. When am I too open? Maybe is what we'll say. So I'll give you this just humorous example. So I was at the Science of Consciousness conference in Tucson this year in April. They're a wonderful conference every other year. in Tucson. And I was near a student who was doing a poster session on some of the research on terminal lucidity that we've done that shows that even when you have Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever, at the last minutes of life, you can come back to full lucidity, say goodbye and thank your family, and then leave, pass over. Anyway, I was talking to her, and this scientist from Boston, a hospital in Boston, came by and just heard a tiny bit of the conversation and said, well, come over to my poster, and then we can talk about each other's posters. So I listened to his poster, which was very materialistically oriented. And then he said, so what are you doing? And when I told him about terminal lucidity, you could see that the veil go over his eyes. And it was like, and he gave all the other reasons why it couldn't be true. And there was just this sadness that I couldn't, somehow he couldn't be curious enough to really listen and say, maybe I should read this research and see whether it might be true. And so those are the moments when I realized sometimes it's okay to judge ahead of time that somebody may not be open and just say, we're going to pass over that thing because they're not ready for it yet. Maybe they'll be ready for it in another few years. You don't know.
Yeah, in 3 years, you could be getting a phone call all excited, being like, now I get exactly what you were talking about. So I'm going to share a quick personal anecdote. I had trained for the Boston Marathon. I'm going to guess that it was around 2010.
Mhm.
I'm living in Austin, Texas for 10 years at that point. And I knew I was kind of under the weather, and I knew there was only a chance that I could get to the halfway point, but I still wanted to give it a go. You know how runners are. So I ran phenomenally and dropped out at the halfway point and didn't beat myself up over it. I was on pace to break sub 3, and I was pretty jacked. But on the plane ride home on a JetBlue leather seats, I started seeing auras for the first time on every other person. I can't explain why it was. I wasn't smart enough to ask. Still haven't asked all these years later why it was only every other person. And then I had the ear pressure you get at like 40,000, 30,000 feet stay with me for a long time. And of course, you do what every red-blooded American does, is run to your local doctor to get your ears checked, everything else. And I had the hearing of a wolf. Who knows? There was no ear pressure when I walked in. The second, by the way, I left, I had ear pressure again when I got in the car and did this. So it was the spirit world saying hi and saying it wasn't about all that. You're fine. But the doctor was great. Ear, nose, throat doctor. Love this guy. His cousin runs in my running group that I was in Austin. And he took time. I don't know any doctor who does this. This is the sweetest man in the world. He took time to explain how his parents were extremely aged, and one at least had no more memory left. And so when she was it was the mom was passing in a nursing home, and they were in two different areas. They weren't side by side. And it was actually the dad who had no memory, but was able to wake up, realize that the wife was passing. He took time to draw me a map of the floor and how it worked, and how he had to go all the way to where the wife was to hold her hand as she died. And somehow he went back. And all I remember is it's like The Notebook a little bit. I don't remember The Notebook that much, but I just remember The Notebook. And so here he explained the most miraculous thing, and he had turned to me and he goes, it's not 1 in a million. Life is filled with little miracles that we don't understand, because I explained the context of it all to him. And we had stayed in touch. It's a long story. And so I just thought that was brilliant, but I'm thinking of the medical community. And I think there's a lot more open-mindedness, because humans are so darn ingenious for finding their hearts. You can't stop anybody. With that, why don't you wrap it up for us on, or just take as much time as you want, on the last reminders for all of us. If you're more of a life coach, you're more of a healer, you're more of a cheerleader for us all to be here more, less here. What's this all about, Alfie? What are your reminders for us all going forward in life?
So again, I'm going to actually quote from that wonderful documentary called Renaissance by Anthony Chen, by the way, is the man who did it, from one of the near-death experiencers when he was on the other side. And he said, what I learned from this experience was the two most sacred times of day for me are the first half hour in the morning after I wake up and the last half hour before I go to sleep. And that's the time when I commune with my higher power. And I literally give that time to my highest self as my way of really showing the most sacred part of me that needs to be nourished. And I thought, what a thing to say for me as a coach too. And I should mention that I do get up in the morning and I meditate in the first thing. And I also chant and meditate to calm my mind down at the end of the day. And I was thinking, it's beautiful when we offer ourselves that connection to the divine, our highest self, whatever we want to call it, whatever name we want to call it, but give ourselves that treat every single day, first thing in the morning and last thing at night, to remember who we really are.
Okay, 2 final exercises, 5 seconds each. We didn't do this next one before the show, but this is super easy. It's seeing auras or light. You'll just see what you want to see and allow for. People at home may have done this. There's been different comments over time. I'm going to do it the Celestine Prophecy way, this way, the movie. But as another guest pointed out, that in the 70s, they were doing it this way. In Egypt, India, they do it this way. Not everybody in Egypt, but India. But I'm going to use this as a background. I'm going to remind folks that a blue sky is number one. Dark colors are great, but if you're cocky, confident, you can just see auras on your dog, the trees, your twin sister. And if you really want to go crazy, you can see the light flowing between you or anywhere, anytime. You're seeing it all the time. But again, what you talked about, and I can't say it the right way, but the filter up here will block it all out. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
Here's the background. I'm going to tell one dad joke. Just what's the only flower found on the human face? Tulips. And here is my energy, and it'll just be gold, green, yellow. If it's clear, it's clear. If there's any gray, it's like a blanket. Breathe extra at home. It'll turn into the real color underneath. Give yourself permission to see with your heart, all of you. And if anybody needs help, turn up the volume by breathing more. Let your shoulders go up and down. And just see if you catch a little filament of light between my fingers. Marjorie, what are you seeing between my fingers? Any light at all? Breathe, breathe,
Yes,
breathe.
I'm seeing gold coming out of the tips of both of your fingers. Yes.
Yay. Thank you very much for doing that. That was spontaneous. I totally forgot to tell you ahead of time we might do that. And I had one more exercise and I got it. This is super easy, but only our highest intent, not my bill paying concerns or my neighbor's a jerk 4 doors down. None of your human society concerns either. Only our highest intent. And we'll blame angels for this. Lots of love. I'm going to put my palm up in Texas and you're in Oregon. If you, with your permission, we'll connect, but only unconditional love and having fun. See if you can feel the sparkle, the joy, the warmth, if you would. Do you mind putting your hand up at all? Is that okay? Oh, okay. So we'll connect and just give it a thumbs up if you're feeling something.
Yes.
Okay. And then do I have permission to whoosh rainbow light your way 3 times with angels' help? First, we're going to sandbag it and do just a little, then medium, and then go big, go home. You're already at home. We'll go big on the third one. We're going to blame angels for this. Lots of love your way. Do I have permission to do that or we'll stay? Okay.
Yes.
So the first one, folks at home, find a jiggle, do the chubby checker, Elvis at home, let go somehow. Here we go. First one your way. Feel what you can feel maybe on your back, all of you. And Marjorie, did you get a little extra whoosh?
Well, yes, I mean, the hand is just vibrating very, very happily.
I didn't do it. It's angels. We're going to blame Min. We're going to blame Charlotte, Joy, and even Audrey Hepburn and Archangel Michael. Okay, second one, medium. Lots of humor this time. I'm going to start blowing through the microphone, though. Catch a Hawaiian wind on your nose. And I know this is all impossible, so we're running with it. Here we go. Second one. And how was that one? A-okay?
Yes, wonderful. Feelings of love.
Third, it's go big, go home. You're already at home. So you might as well give it some intention. Like, hey, I got a marathon I'm running this weekend, which, by the way, hopefully you're not, or you are. I need extra help from mile 18 to the finish line. Why settle for just now when you can ripple into the future? It's all one big now. Okay, here we go. And Marjorie, what are the words for that?
Energy in my heart for a big project coming up in the next few days. There we go.
You've been super gracious to come on the show. I'd love, if you wish, just say yes. What's a final bit of enthusiastic reminder? It doesn't have to be the trip to Egypt. It doesn't have to be reading this book or going to this institute or even chanting, although if you want to share a chant or anything, you can. What's it all about one more time? Because isn't it like right here in front of us, simple in the immediate moment, but good luck with that. It could spend a whole lifetime trying to figure it out and was here the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really is that love is always there. Love is vibrating from inside of me. And if I simply close my eyes, go inside, I can feel that and know that it's always with me.
Okay. And I lied. I have one quick question. Has anybody been telling you, or at all, you've gotten this 50 times by now, the traditional healer side, it'll ruin your science side. But have you been getting shoved, pushed, or reminded by the universe or just regular human beings or other healers that maybe you should be hanging a shingle out sometime soon?
I mean, it's an interesting question. And in fact, I did take a Reiki workshop. And in my book, Infinite Awareness, I talk about then doing also a practicum for 6 months. And in fact, when I would put my hands on the different chakras of people, they went into very, very quiet states and talked about the beautiful feelings they had. And so I loved it. It's not my main thing that I do, but it allowed me to see that healing is possible. I simply went into a meditative state, and then the meditative energy goes through us and does the rest. So it's beautiful.
Marjorie Woollacott, thank you for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. You're a total treat. You're a total joy. And I have to say, I am a huge fan. You got major enthusiasm, and that's my number one thing. I love it. You're just wonderful. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Michael.